The Middle East remains tense amid this fragile temporary truce, even after President Trump backed down from his threat to eliminate a, quote, whole civilization in Iran.
And joining us now to discuss what's going on, the former Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. I know you recently called for the president to be removed from office under the 25th Amendment to the Constitution after that threat that he made about destroying the whole civilization of Iran. The president has a long history of shocking and unprecedented social media posts. Why was this the final straw for you?
If you care about truth over party and want real analysis you won't get from the mainstream media, hit that like button and subscribe right now. We've got a major political moment unfolding, and it's not coming from the left. It's coming from inside the Republican movement itself. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the most recognizable America First voices, is now publicly calling out President Trump over his recent rhetoric toward Iran. And not just lightly, she's calling it dangerous, reckless, and completely unacceptable. Now let's break this down.
Because it's absolute madness. How can any person that is mentally stable call for an entire civilization of people to be murdered, to be wiped out, to never come back again? That's what the president called for. And that shows that there's serious instability in his thinking, that he would, not only would he even say that in a private room, perhaps with his advisors, but actually go to his megaphone, his Truth Social, and post that for the entire country and the entire world. And it's unreal. This should never be tolerated. I know it's a very difficult, hard stretch to see it actually coming through, but the conversation needs to be had, and he's out of control, and people within the administration need to step up, take responsibility, and rein this in.
And administration officials, as we've heard, have said that he was ready to follow through with this threat. Just hours after he made it, he announced this 2-week ceasefire that's still very tenuous at the moment. The White House is claiming it was the president's tough rhetoric that brought Iran to its knees. What do you say to that?
I'm sorry, that's not tough rhetoric. It's insanity. It's calling for the murder of an entire civilization of men, women, children, of innocent civilians. That is not what I would call proper or even decent negotiations. There should be negotiations happening, and they did happen. And J.D. Vance, the vice president, was the one that helped bring that ceasefire. It doesn't seem to be much of a ceasefire, but it is supposedly a ceasefire. And that happened through negotiations through J.D. Vance. And J.D. Vance did not go to his social media and threaten to murder every single man, woman, and child in Iran. Presumably, we can only presume that that would happen through nuclear bombs, because that's the type of horrific weaponry that would be used to wipe out an entire civilization. So no, I push back on that. And I think the American people fully agree. Everyone was outraged.
I just want to be clear, Congresswoman, do you genuinely believe President Trump had the intention of killing Iran's entire population of more than 90 million people if Iran had not agreed to a ceasefire? Is the U.S. military, for example, even capable of that?
I don't think that our good men and women in the U.S. military would want to even carry something like that out. That's the other thing. And I think that's important to point out. Our men and women in the military are the greatest among us. They're serving our country, defending our freedoms, and I'm so grateful to them, and I support them so much. But we should never have a commander-in-chief that would call for the great men and women of the United States military to wipe out an entire civilization and put that on their shoulders. And, you know, we've already got so many veterans that live with PTSD every single day in America, that can't sleep at night with terrible nightmares of the wars that they fought in foreign lands, foreign wars and foreign lands, not for America, for foreign countries and foreign purposes. And this is what the president was talking about. So I can only take him at his word, because those are the words that he spoke to the entire world.
I just want to follow up with that. The White House has denied they were going to use a nuclear bomb, but for critics of Trump, they're like, look, how can you say no one saw this coming? Obviously, calling for the death of a whole civilization is at a different level. But as Wolf mentioned earlier, Trump has been known for his bombastic rhetoric, right? He's been doing that for years. And you used to be a supporter. Now you're speaking out against him, but people might be asking, well, didn't you see this coming?
Well, I've always been a supporter of President Trump for the policies. That's what I cared about. But once he became president, he changed his policies. What we campaigned on was no more foreign wars. And President Trump said he was going to be the peace president. Well, he's gone from being the peace president to the war president. And I don't support that at all. I'm not offended oftentimes by people's words. People on the right and the left have lots of different types of language and statements. However, it's their actions that is what I pay attention to. And the president lost my support when he covered up the Epstein files and called me a traitor and wanted to primary me because I supported women that were raped at 16 and 18 years old, or 14 years old even. And I don't support the president in going to war in Iran. And what we campaigned on and what President Trump promised America was to put America first. And now we've got rising inflation, gas prices are going out of control, but we also have to put the blame on both parties. $100 in 2021 is now only $80 in 2026 because of the declining value of the dollar. So Pamela and Wolf, I blame both parties for this, and it's an absolute failure to the American people, but I cannot support a president that wants to murder an entire civilization of people.
Right, and you called for his removal through the 25th Amendment after that threat. When you look at the polls, I wonder what your reaction is when it comes to MAGA Republicans, people who identify as MAGA. 9 out of 10 support this war, and that's pretty consistent across the board. How do you explain that?
Well, I would explain that by breaking down the demographics of that poll. The polling that I have seen is it's mainly the baby boomers, Republicans that watch Fox News all day, every day, are the ones that are mostly supporting this war in Iran. However, it's the majority of Americans, especially 50 and under, that do not support this war in Iran. And I would argue that if the baby boomer generation, my parents' generation, whom I love very much, needs to think clearly about how a war in Iran could have long-term implications for their children and their grandchildren, and really can reconsider their support for that. We've got the Strait of Hormuz is barely open with very few ships going through. The price of oil is skyrocketing, and this isn't going to end quickly. This is going to have profound effects for a very long time, and it'll take a long time to get back on track, especially if this war continues to escalate. So my prayers are with those that are negotiating a ceasefire and a peace deal. I very much hope that J.D. Vance is successful, because it seems to be his voice is the one that is really pushing for peace and to end this. He was opposed to the war to begin with, as there's been many reports that have said that. And I really hope to see people in leadership in Washington, D.C. get back on track and care about regular Americans, because regular Americans are sick and tired of all of this, and they're tired of not being able to afford life. And they very much want the drama in Washington to end so that they can carry on and enjoy their everyday lives. They're not interested in killing people in foreign lands. I can tell you that much.
Congresswoman, with Congress out of town on recess once again right now, we really didn't hear the Republican leadership respond to President Trump's threat to eliminate an entire civilization. We did, however, see many Democrats join you in calling for President Trump's removal from office. What do you make of the fact that you seem to be more on the side of Democrats on this specific issue rather than your own party? What do you think?
Just to be clear, Wolf, I'm not a Democrat, so I want to make that clearly known. None of my positions have changed. I think I'm one of the few honest Republicans willing to talk about it. Everyone else is just afraid to speak out against the president because they're terrified of having an ugly Truth Social post dropped on them, or a primary challenge like what's happening to Thomas Massie, supported by dark money from billionaires that don't even live in Thomas Massie's Kentucky, the 4th District of Kentucky. That's what other Republicans are terrified. So they won't speak up. They're cowards. And I really have to call out the speaker, Mike Johnson, who calls himself a Christian. I don't know how he can stand by those words. That's what was so offensive to me. Any Christian serving in Congress or serving in the Senate and serving in the administration really needs to take pause and ask themselves, as a Christian, do you really support the president calling for the annihilation, calling to wipe out an entire civilization of people? And I don't think you should, because that's not what Jesus said, and that's not what Christianity is all about. And so I think that, yeah, I'm probably one of the few. It was me, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, and a few others that are willing to call it out and speak out against this, because we're willing to be honest. It's not about aligning ourselves with right or left or Democrat or Republican. It's about being honest.
According to Green, Trump's statement about potentially wiping out an entire civilization crossed a line that should never be crossed by any American president. She called it absolute madness and argued that no stable leader should even suggest something like that, let alone broadcast it to the world. And here's where it gets serious. She's not just criticizing tone, she's questioning leadership. Green says this kind of rhetoric doesn't represent strength, it represents instability. And she's even floated the idea that officials inside the administration need to step in and rein things in. Now pause right there. As conservatives, we believe in strength. We believe in peace through power. But we also believe in discipline, strategy, and putting America first, not dragging the country into another endless foreign conflict. Green makes a key point. This isn't about words alone, it's about direction. She argues Trump campaigned as a peace president, someone who would end foreign wars, not escalate them. And now, she says, that promise is being broken. She also pushed back hard on the idea that aggressive rhetoric forced Iran into a ceasefire. Instead, she credits diplomacy, specifically pointing to Vice President J.D. Vance as someone working behind the scenes to de-escalate tensions the right way. And let's be honest here. Most Americans, especially younger voters, are tired of foreign wars. They're tired of seeing billions spent overseas while inflation rises at home, the dollar weakens, and everyday life gets harder. Green even called out both parties for failing the American people economically. That's something a lot of us agree on. But what really stands out is this. She says many Republicans are staying silent, not because they agree, but because they're afraid of backlash, afraid of being targeted politically. That's a serious accusation, because if true, it means we're not having honest debates inside the movement. And that's how bad decisions get made. Now look, this is where I stand. You can support Trump's policies, you can respect what he's done, but that doesn't mean you ignore everything. Real leadership means accountability. It means calling things out when they go too far. Strength is not about threatening destruction. It's about controlling outcomes, protecting American interests, and avoiding unnecessary war. And if the America First movement is going to stay strong, it has to stay grounded in those principles. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is MTG right to speak out, or is this a step too far? If you made it this far, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more real, unfiltered breakdowns of what's happening in Washington. And stay tuned, because this story is far from over. Before you go, watch the next video on your screen, because it breaks down the growing divide inside the GOP and what it means for the future of the America First movement. You don't want to miss that. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.